Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my PvE Warden tank build video. This is my first attempt at building a build video like this, so I apologize in advance for a little confusion or back and forth about it, but hopefully this will be helpful for you. I have been playing a Warden tank since about 4 or 5 months after Morrowind came out, and have been doing a lot of endgame PvE content with it. I have cleared VMAW, all of the hard mode Craglorns, VAS, and currently at the triplets progression VHOF. And I will do an update to this since Somerset is around the corner, but I wanted to go ahead and get this out now for everyone to be able to have advantage of. I'll talk a little bit about PvE content and 4-man and trials setups, as well as options for when you do not have a healer with you for 4-man setups and a couple different gear options. So let's jump into it and apply a couple of buffs real quick and take a look at what we've got going on here. So this is a pretty standard PvE tank setup of gear. As you can see, we've got some pretty decent stats here, around the range of 42k health, almost 20k max magic, and almost 22k stamina. This is using the Lord Mundus stone, which I use for certain content. Otherwise, I'll use the Atro, which I will show to you here a little bit later on. Now notice the magic recovery is a little high on the end, and obviously our buffs have worn off, but when we apply our buffs here, and including our critter, we sit at right around 30k and 29k resistances. And we are wearing certain sets that are going to help us with that as well. Talking about gear, we are wearing Ebon and Alkosh shields. Infused and Crusher Enchant is pretty much the standard go-to. You definitely want to run that at all times for the maximum uptime of that and the extra resistance. It's a pretty sizable chunk. This shield is reinforced with a Hakijo. You could use infused as well. I have several infused shields. I just haven't bothered to trait change because reinforced works just fine for me as well. I am using an ice staff on the back bar. I also have some lightning staff options, and I have some restoration staffs for certain 4-man content like Dragon Star Arena and other vet dungeons where I'm maybe helping out by providing combat prayer to the group. I particularly like the ice staff on the back bar because I like to be able to kind of mitigate my resource management a little bit back and forth between the two, and I like the ability to provide a ranged taunt for free. I don't have to slot that every single time. There are certain situations where you're going to want to apply slot that ranged taunt, however. Situations where you have to quickly pull adds in, but in most fights you probably use the ice staff just to taunt 1 or 2 adds to start the fight or the boss, and then be able to utilize your gate to pull in any lesser adds that are of concern for you. I like the Lord Warden helm. It's particularly effective. The one piece gives us that extra resistance buff, which really helps us be at a really nice solid location, and then the extra 3800 resistance means that we're going to be well over the 32.5 cap when it's procced in both situations. In a situation where maybe I was wearing this as an infused piece on my shield, then that might make it a little bit different, but it also allows us to kind of provide that. Plus, the group benefit of this buff is very strong, especially for stamina DPS who are right nearby you. When you combine this with your Ice Fortress ability, you're giving around approximately 9,000 resistance to those people, which is a lot of extra mitigation for them to be able to survive better with. Again, the other set here is Ebon. I like to go infused with Hakijos for all of my big pieces, and typically I'll do scurrdi, maybe 1 divines depending on the situation. This is not a perma block build, so it really just depends. Small pieces can be a variety of options. A lot of tanks like healthy. I think healthy is fine. I kind of diversify based off of what options I have available, and some of my sets will have Hakijos on them just because, to me, resources are a very important part of tanking, resource management, so having more max resources through Hakijos is important to me, I think, and critical. I am running 5-1-1, 5 heavy pieces, 1 light shoulder, and one medium body piece. One of the things about this setup that I really like is I like running one healthy piece of jewelry. So in this case, one healthy ebon ring. On other setups I'll show you, I run one healthy jewelry, so we get that extra health increase, and then obviously the 2 rings of Alkosh. I'm running 2 magic recovery enchants. It's important because there are a lot of magicka-based skills. I do not need magic to restore stamina. That's one of the advantages of the Warden, is that I don't need one resource to restore the other. They restore naturally through other skills. However, I have a lot of magic-based skills that I need to be able to function, and so I like to have a high magic recovery and then one reduced block cost reduction. Again, these are kind of player preference. I've been playing around with the idea of maybe adding, instead of another magic recovery, adding a potion cooldown enchant, which reduces the cooldown of the potions by 5 seconds. As an Argonian, potion cooldown is very important because your potions act as supercharged tri-stat potions, so they're very helpful for that. And in certain situations, I will have 2 shield play enchants on, for example, AA hard mode, or scenarios where I'm doing a lot more blocking than normal. However, in most content, I found that I don't have to block the entire time, and so I can let go of block a little bit and take advantage of having a little stamina recovery to work. Now, this next setup is really based around kind of 4-man content where you are not running with a healer, or if you're running with a healer who doesn't have spell power cure. Now, it's very important to recognize that in this setup for gear, that you are playing the role of tank and kind of off healer. You are not the primary heal element, and if your group cannot survive without a healer, then you may need to think about running a different set than this one. In this scenario, I'm running, again, Sword and Board and Ice Staff back bar. In a lot of scenarios, you can also run a Restoration Staff. I highly recommend the Asylum one, because if you run a Restoration Staff, you're probably going to run the Blessing of Protection and the Combat Prayer Morph, and getting that extra, there's just no reason not to take that option. Going forward in the next update for Somerset, I'll probably switch to a Spell Power Cure, Ice, and Restoration Staff, but for right now it's relatively generic. Again, Infused Crusher. I have Reinforced on here, but it can be either option. I'm running Earth Gore, again, great option to help heal the group and heal myself. Without a healer, obviously you are self-sufficient and self-dependent on your own. It's very important to recognize that. Since Earth Gore, I'm not running Lord Warden, I'm losing that little bit of that resistance bonus. I'm going to go ahead and put on the Curse of Resilient Yokeda. And Resilient Yokeda, I think this is a great set, comes from Ethereal Archive. Obviously, 2 and 3 piece give me some spell and physical resistance, a little more health. And then this 5-piece set is really strong. So the damage is okay, 4,500 to all enemies within you, 10 meters. As a tank, you're not really worried about doing damage, so that's just kind of bonus. But the healing you for 100% of the damage done is a huge part of this. So that's going to be a if you're having 3 ads around you, that's a 13k heal right there, 13,000 heal base. Very good at bringing up a lot of elements for you and giving you kind of that natural burst heal for just doing your job, just tanking and holding the boss and blocking when necessary. And every 10 seconds is pretty solid. I would run, and typically do run, I didn't put it on here, but I typically will run my Resilient Yokeda Ice Staff, so that way even when I swap to my back bar, I still get that 4-piece bonus for the max health, so my health doesn't go down. Get Resilient Yokeda, and then 1 body piece of Spell Power Cure. I'll again run 2 jewelry, same enchants, and then the Yokeda Healthy option here. I probably will swap out my enchants and my traits on this jewelry come Somerset, so I'll do an update video when that happens. Very useful setup for 4-man content, primarily because of your leeching vines. You're going to be giving Spell Power Cure out all the time, and will give just a nice little buff to your DPS to allow them to hit a little harder, which means you can tank a little bit less stuff. Tank it for less frequently, and you can worry less about those big heavy hits. If your group's struggling, you need to be a little more selfish, you can swap around to some other options, and we'll take a look at a selfish setup that I like to run for selfish combinations as we get going. Alright, now we're going to talk a little bit about a selfish sort of setup option. You have a couple different options to support you in this, and a lot of it, again, depends on the fight and what you're doing in your comfort level. I use this particular setup for Vet ESO ads when I'm away from the group. or I probably will use this if I decide to ever do the Vet Hellrod method, where you take all the gargoyles out of the way in hard mode from the group. But this setup is really designed around giving you lots of burst heal options and support in case something happens. As you get more comfortable, I think you could probably swap some things around. Again, this is so Resilient Yokeda, which we've talked about previously for the 4-man content, and Mazatoon is my other second 5-piece set. Now, Mazatoon is a great setup. You get a little bit of each resource, which again is important for solo content. And notice that you are, when you take damage under 30% health, you will get basically a free potion, free tri-stat potion. 8,000 health and 6,000 magic and stamina every 45 seconds. So it's one of those, if you get low, it gives you a little tick up to kind of help you get through all of that and support you. And as you'll see here in this setup, our resources in our setup is a little bit different, also because we're running now all healthy jewelry. You can see we're just a little bit higher up on our resources across the board. A little less stamina, but a little more health base as well, which is a big component of that to help us out. Again, this is using the Lord. The Atronach would be a little bit different if I used that as well. To kind of walk you through, and I'll show you what a setup with the Atronach would look like in a little bit. So, if you wanted to, I use 1 and 1 here. That way, when I swap over, I still get both 4-piece bonuses, and I keep the 5-piece Resilient Yokeda on both bars, so I can keep that heal proccing as frequently as I can. It is important that if you wanted to really go more selfish, more defensive, you could swap it out and go with a defending instead of infused, and use a weakening enchant. Again, if all you're doing is just holding ads away from the group so that the group can fight the boss and they're not actually planning to kill the ads, I would probably swap this out and go this direction with this weakening enchant, because that's going to make them hit me less. I'm going to get a little more resistance from that setup, and then run the appropriate shield of the other type to correspond with it. If you need even a little more buff and bonus, Master's Sword and Board is always a great option as well. That 2-piece set, when you do the puncture, you get an extra 3k heal and get that extra resistance bonus. So really makes you over the top on both resistance options. But this is, again, a little more selfish if you actually need to hold something that you need to hold, or if you're going to be fighting as beforehand, I'd go back to that Crusher enchant. That 2100 penetration is just too hard to pass up in that scenario. Earthgore, again, it's just a really great oh shit heal. You get stunned holding the overcharger, or something happens and you get hit really hard. Just a nice strong burst heal. Even in the next update, it's going to do 6 seconds, but still going to be strong. And Engine Guardian is another great option to run if you're having to perma-block a lot. So definitely those two are my go-to sets. And then Mazatoon and Resilient, same setup down here with the 2 magic recovery and 1 shield play enchant. Again, sometimes I might put 2 shield play enchants on, just depends on the scenario, but the healthy jewelry really kind of puts it there for us. That's a little bit more about gear. Other sets that I didn't really show you but are great. Lunar Bastion. I think this is a very strong and underrated set. Minor Aegis, 5% less damage is always great. Healing Taken is always strong. Synergy, get these every 2-second little damage shields, 2400. May not seem like a lot. It's not a lot. It kind of paper thin as a shield's concerned, but it's a nice size shield. If your group has several stamina DPS, they're getting a free damage shield out of it. And that 5% helps you be a little bit more resistant. So definitely something to think about as you run through it. The other set I ran for a long time, and sometimes in 4-man content still, is Imperium. Imperium gives you a lot of health and healing taken, always a good thing. And when you take damage, you have 10% chance to create yourself an ally's damage shield, 12k damage shield every 15 seconds. 12k is a big damage shield. The downside of this is you can't control when it procs, so you don't have any ability to really utilize this to say, there's a big hit coming, let me pop this first. But it is nice just in general fights. It's really great on your DPS and your healers to give them that extra 12k damage shield. Give them a little boost in that respect. So, comes from a dungeon, pretty easy to pick up and run normal, and pretty solid option. So, that's all the options I like to run for my gear setups. So let's take a look at some other elements of this build. Alright, let's talk a little bit about champion points. We'll start with the most interesting and by extra I mean most boring tree, the blue tree for the tanks. I like to run 75 and Blessed. If you want to run 100 and Blessed, that's perfectly fine. The extra percent's great. And Elfborn, healing, and critical strike 56 points. I put a lot in here because unlike Dragon Knight or tanks, Wardens have a lot of magic-based heals. Your main heal is magic-based. Minor Magic Steel, or Minor Health Steel, excuse me, is magic-based. And several of your other heals are magic-based. So having this extra ability is useful for those scenarios. I put a little bit here into Weapon Expert and Mastered Arms. I'm doing direct damage when I puncture somebody, or when I use Heroic Slash, or anything like that. And then, whenever I'm doing light or heavy attacks, my one-handed shield, still a little more damage. Kind of ran out of places to put points, so feel free to put those elsewhere if you've got a better option. A little bit in the Thaumaturge, because I am using a couple of dot-based abilities. And then Precise Strikes, because I will be using Vigor periodically, and so when I do, having the extra heal bonuses for that is always helpful. Don't forget, since our max resource is a little bit lower than what a true healer would be, that you're going to want to use the CP, and really you're not going to be doing a lot of damage, so put it more towards healing. Green Tree. 81 points into Shadow Ward. I don't see a need for much more than this. People like to put 100, that's up to you. Depends on how much you're blocking. I typically don't have any issue with resources, and so I think 81 points is just fine. 20 points for Tumbling. There are certain scenarios where you need a dodge roll, and so having some points in there is very helpful. Also, some of these passives are great. Treasure boxes are repairing armor, and quality of items for the chest is always nice. But if you have anything less than 7 points in Shadow Ward as a tank, I think you're probably missing the boat there. So really, at least 81 I think is a good spot to start with. Tenacity. You will be doing heavy attacks in a lot of scenarios and not perma blocking, so having this in here will help you restore. And obviously with the Ice Staff, we're doing heavy attacks, so get a chance to restore resources that way is great. And then Arcanist for more magical recovery. Didn't put any in stamina recovery because it is not super effective since you're blocking most of the time with your sword and board bar. And healthy is kind of a wasted spot, mainly because your health recovery is shot, because in this build I am a vampire. So not really worth a percentage bonus on that side of it. Put 19 into Bashing Focus for that 12%. I'm probably going to put a few more points into here in the next update. You do a little fair bit of bashing, but it's not the end of the world, so to speak. But you definitely want to be able to take advantage of that element for it. Now on to the Red Tree. We'll start here on the Steed. I have 61 points in Ironclad. I know a lot of tanks who have a few more points than I do in here. So again, you kind of got to get comfortable with what works well for you. I do put a few more points in here for certain harder hitting fights like Hell Raw Hard Mode or other scenarios like that, where I know I'm just going to take a bunch of big heavy attacks and direct damage. But typically 61 points in there. This is my kind of standard setup. 49 and 49, pretty much evenly split between the two. And then 48 in Thick-Skinned. Damage over time can really hurt a lot if you're not careful, and so you want to make sure you take advantage of that. And Ironclad. This is where I kind of deviate a little bit from, I guess, other builds. I put 15 in Quick Recovery. Between the Argonian and that means not only my heals, but the heals that come from my healers are better, which means it makes their job a little bit easier, which means I'm more likely to get other resource benefiting things from them, like orbs or shards or other synergies. So I like to be able to make their lives a little easier, because it'll make my life a little easier. And then 18 points into Heavy Armor Focus. This is really to make sure, the biggest thing I think that a lot of tanks take a lot of damage on is the physical damage. You know, we're not necessarily taking the big AoE hits that will, or magic attacks. There are several of those in several trials, but in a Warden tank in particular, the big physical heavy attacks I have found to be the biggest challenge, because you don't have a strong, consistent forward-facing damage shield for direct damage like that. So I recently did this and put these 18 points into Heavy Armor Focus to give me a little extra oomph on that, and have found that to be pretty helpful in better surviving those heavy attacks and putting me much closer to cap more regularly. So that's the lineup for the CP tree. If anyone has suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm by no means an expert. just kind of what I found that works pretty well for me, and that I've kind of begged, borrowed, and adjusted from other tanks that I've. Alright, let's talk a little bit about skills. Now, it's important to understand that there are a couple of different options available, and we'll talk about passives first. So you have your three main skill lines: Animal Companions, Green Balance, and Winter's Embrace. It is important to get pretty much the passives for almost all of these. As you can see, I don't have Advanced Species because I'm not really worried about doing more damage. I'm more interested in the other passives, but some of these passives are really important. When you summon an animal or it's killed or unsummoned, you restore 1500 health. Well, your netch counts as an animal, so every time it disappears, you get restored health. Generate ultimate, 4 ultimate every 8 seconds when you activate an animal companion ability. Your netch's animal companion ability is going to give you that 4-second ultimate plus your back bar ability as well. And Flourish. This one is huge and a very nice advantage of it. When you have an animal companion ability slotted, increase your magic and stamina recovery by 12%. As you can see, we've stacked a lot of elements into magic recovery to help us with that, but the 12% is huge and a very nice passive that not a lot of other groups have to with, and that's one of the reasons why I have the netch on my front bar. Green Balance, you're going to want all of the passives here for this. You're going to want all of these. Again, Major Mending's nice. I don't notice it that much, to be honest. I'm not paying much attention to see how frequently it comes up, particularly because it's only a Green Balance ability, which is the heals off of this bar, but, you know, who doesn't like Major Mending? This one's really useful for us as tanks. Nature's Gift. When healing an ally with a Green Balance ability, gain 250 magicka or stamina. Restores your lowest resource pool. So, I know a few Warden tanks who have talked about actually making their stamina lower than their magicka so they can take advantage of this. So it's important to understand and remember that you want to be able to utilize this. But every second is going to be occurring. Well, if you're healing yourself using some Green Balance abilities, like Lotus Blossom or Leeching Vines, where every time you take damage, or someone else takes damage, it does a heal, then it's going to go ahead and give you those resources back. So very, very useful. You don't necessarily notice it. It's very much an over time sort of resource return, but it also makes it feel like your resources aren't going down nearly as quickly. Emerald Moss, healing done for every ability that you have slotted. Very nice, especially 4-man content when we swap up our ultimate for the healing ult, and on our back bar gives us a little bit more as well. And then Minor Toughness. This one's huge. The Minor Toughness is a great one. Notice it is when healing you or an ally, period. It is not about Green Balance abilities. So any heal you do, including the one you get from summoning your pet, increases your Minor Toughness. Now, you do get this from Warhorn, so if your group is very well organized with their Warhorn rotations, then you're going to get, this will be kind of a double dipping, which so won't double up. But if there's any time when the Warhorn runs off, you will always have Minor Toughness, and your allies will always have Minor Toughness, because you're healing them constantly with your Leeching Vines and the Health Steal, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So it's a great ability to really take advantage of. Winter's Embrace passives, very important. First one here, applying Chilled to enemies for Winter's Embrace abilities by 200%. There's several Winter's Embrace abilities you're going to be using on a regular basis, so this is a great one, and Chilled applies Minor Maim, which means less damage done. Easy peasy. Increase your physical spell resistance by 500 for each Winter's Embrace ability slotted Frozen Armor. Another great ability. As you can see, I'm currently getting 2,000 on my front bar for this. Very, very useful, and 1,000 on my back bar. But every ability you have gives you a little extra. Very helpful for getting a little extra resistance and keeping up with that. And since unlike Dragon Knights or other tanks where they have some other abilities that give them some bonus resistance base, this is our way of getting that, so you gotta be very careful in how you slot everything. Icy Aura, this is obviously I think worth having. I don't know much, or haven't seen much effectiveness about it in comparison to my tank. And Piercing Cold, again, this is a damage ability, so it's going to be a different animal in how to utilize it, but it's very helpful in doing more damage. So if you want to just kind of min-max out your stuff, feel free to go for it. Obviously, I have not put all of it into it. You want everything in Sword and Board. Sword and Board is a given. all of these passives, I'm not going to go through every single one, but every single one's going to be helpful, especially battlefield mobility, but all of these are great. Have them, be ready to rock and roll. Instruction staff, you want to make sure you're taking advantage of all of your passives here. Not necessarily all of them, excuse me, but you want at least one in Trifocus. That's what makes it so that you use Magicka instead of Stamina. And the second point of it, apparently I do not have. It just gives you a stronger damage shield, so not a huge benefit, but worth having. So let's go ahead and add that. Elemental Force, also very great by adding all of the status effects. Again, Chilled being our biggest one using Ice Staff, but we will sometimes run Crushing Shock, so we have a chance to apply all three. Very helpful. And Ancient Knowledge is great because it will reduce the cost of blocking the amount of damage we can block, so very necessary to utilize. The other two, not as huge a big deal because you're not really focused on doing damage. You're not going to be killing anybody. So if you have the extra points, go for it, but not necessarily a huge necessary element to it. Now, I picked up all of the minor light armor and medium armor passives here. Magic Recovery, Reduce Cost of Magicka, and Resistance. Why did I do this? Well, I'm running 5-1-1 most of the time. So at the very least, I'm getting one of these, as you can see, 4%, 2%, and one little bonus. And so every little bit helps, right? A little extra 4% Magic Recovery goes a long way. 2% cost reduction goes a long way. Same thing with medium armor. Reduce the cost of my medium armor and my abilities. Typically when I'm running Eben and Alkosh, or Lunar Bastion Alkosh, or Torag's Alkosh, you'll see 1 point in here, and that'll make me have more stam recovery and reduce cost of my stam. No reason not to. The other ones, not as necessary. Weapon Critical, not a big deal. Sneak Detection Size, not a big deal. And the other two are 5 or more pieces, so not as big a deal. Athletics might be worthwhile because of the roll dodge reduction, so worth looking at to consider. You want all of your heavy armor passives. They're all great. Have them. Don't leave home without them. 2 in Soul Summons, just so you can save Soul Gems, is great. Vampire. This is a recent change for me. I've recently added myself into Vampire. Every tank I know is a Vampire. It's very wise just to be one for a couple things. First of all, again, magic stam recovery by 10%. Hard to pass that up. And Undeath. When you start taking damage below 50% health, you start taking reductions to your damage. So the lower your health gets, the better off you're going to be. And then Unnatural Resistance to make your health recovery just a little bit less sucky from all of that. Now, Vampire comes in stages 2 through 4. You need to be Vampire Stage 3 for this. I never run in Vampire Stage 4. There's no need for it, no reason to. I'm not using any Vampire skills, so I would always recommend keeping yourself at Stage 3 using the Bloody Mara food. I picked up Silver Leash in preparation for the next patch, and don't have anything Mage's Guild. I am not running Balance, a little bit different, but I do have all of my Undaunted passives. Both of these are huge. Look at how much health I get for popping a Synergy. 2,000, and almost 1,000 in each resource. Definitely a huge benefit for having that. Take advantage. And again, the 5-1-1 option. This is where I'm still wearing my 6-1 setup here, but 5-1-1 means you're going to get more in the way of benefits, so just take advantage. I don't have much in Assault. In Support, Magicka Aid is a great option to have if you're going to be running any Magicka recoverabilities. So Stalwart Guard and Purge I typically run often, so I would recommend Magicka Aid. I don't have it in there right now, but I'm going to add some because it's worth having. And again, get yourself to Support 9 and 10, get into PvP for that business. All your passives, I'm an Argonian. I think they are one of the strongest tanking races right now. Nord, Dragon Knight, sorry, not Dragon Knight, Nord or Imperial are both also excellent options as well to consider. Just kind of play what works well for you. For me, the Potion bonus, Resourceful, first of all, max magic bonus is nice, but then the extra almost 5k to each one for drinking a potion means my tripods become super potions, like 10,000 of each one. And it also means that if you want to just use a random trash potion, you're still going to get the other resources as well. Max health by 9% is great, and then the poison disease resistance is also wonderful. And then healing done and healing received by 5% just makes life easier for everybody. So some great passives there. Alchemy, you want medicinal use, make everything last longer. Very useful to make sure that your passives are going up beyond that. Now let's talk about the bars. The skill bars look a little bit unique and different for each one. And this is the front bar. So one of the things about Warden tanking I found, and tanking in general, but particularly for the Warden, is you've got a lot of different options you want to utilize based off of the fight you're doing. So this is kind of my most standard setup, and this standard setup is typically for trials. And we'll take a look at some options and other skills and abilities you can use in some of what you call your flex spots. So first one is Shimmering Shield. Shimmering Shield, I think, is one of the most class-defining abilities for the Warden for PvE tanking. It is awesome. The cost is going up a little bit in the next update. However, it is great. 65,000 points of damage from 3 projectiles. Now, this can be deceiving. It's not a 65k damage shield. It's only for ranged projectiles, so things that shoot at you, and it will take a shield off regardless of how much damage it actually does. So it won't stick around until all 65k is gone. It will stick around until you are hit by 3 projectiles. That's very important, and sometimes I've seen it actually take 2 projectiles if the attack is heavy enough, heavy hitting enough. So be aware of that. Now, you gain back almost 600 magicka for each projectile you absorb. So that basically makes the cost of this like 800 or something like that. It makes it very, very, very cheap. But you also get major heroism for 6 seconds. 3 ultimates every 1.5 seconds. That is massive. And in any fight where you have a ranged enemy, use this, keep it up 100% of the time, so that way you are keeping up that major heroism up as much as you can. This is very, very effective for a lot of ranged boss fights. Vetfalkreath Hold, last boss, is all ranged attacks. Use this on him. That heavy will feel like nothing. Rakat's Barrage is great for this. Taking the Dreadstalkers in VMAW, taking the Serpent Fangs or the Overchargers in Sanctum of Phidia. There are a lot of ads. Any archers, anything like that, this is very helpful for, and you get a great amount of resource regeneration. Very, very helpful. Pierce Armor. Very standard setup. Both Major Breach, Major Ward, and taunts the enemy. Critical. Gotta have it, gotta use it all the time. Bullnetch. Now, this is from my animal companions tree. 4,000 stamina over 27 seconds and grants me major sorcery and major brutality. Weapon and spell damage by 20%. So this is great because weapon and spell damage means not only do I hit a little harder, but all of my heals heal harder. They heal better. And since I'm not using any potions to buff those, having this up as a constant buff is fantastic from that element from it. It also heals me because when I proc it, and it will give me the minor toughness if I need to actually be healed. This is not the same as Igneous Shards and Helping Hands from the DK. That is a quick hit, or like Dark Deal, where you get a lot of back, or a small amount back, but it's hits at a time. This is basically like having a constant low-level recovery. It's only 4,000 over 27 seconds, so you want to have this up 100%, but it's not an oh shit button. It's just part of your rotation you want to have in place. A lot of tanks I see run this on their back bar as well. Another great place to put it, not necessarily a bad spot, but you want to make sure you have this on to utilize. Only way you're going to get stamina back, but it means that even while you're holding block, you're recovering stamina passively. Very useful. Polar Wind. This is your self-heal, and will also heal an ally. It will heal you and an ally, and will heal an additional 2% every second. So big 11% bonus, which one of the reasons why running the Lord is effective is if you're in that 40k plus health range, this makes this a 4,500 base heal, 4,500. That's before crits, and again before any of your blessed or other elements that come into play. So having those buffs this up, and then you get an additional 2% health every 2 seconds over 10 seconds. So heal over time and a heal. I like running it, like popping it. There is another morph of this that will do damage to enemies around you. I have not played around with that because I like this as the ability to heal an ally. Very, very useful. Gripping Shards. This is our AoE ad control mechanism and our ability to get back Health Steal and Magicka Steal. So, you are doing damage every second for 12 seconds and reducing movement speed by 30%. So everyone who's inside of it is slowed, very helpful for ad control, and taking damage every second, which is very useful for when you have someone putting Elemental Drain on a target. Means you're getting back that magic. And if someone's putting Health Steal, typically you, on the target, putting Health Steal on them, meaning you're getting health back, free heal over time, and a free extra boost to your magic recovery. On the cast, enemies are immobilized for 3 seconds. Again, that is where the ad control comes into play. You get them all grouped up around you, you pop this a couple of times, they're not going anywhere, your DPS can drop their AoEs in one spot, nuke everything down. It's great. Damage will be based off your max health. Again, this damage is minimal, not a big deal. It's not for the damage. It's not for DPSing, it's for providing support. Northern Storms are ultimate on this front bar. Now, you're typically not going to use this unless you're in trouble. This is really here passively to give you the extra 500 resistance and to give you the max magicka. While slotted, your max magicka is increased by 8%. When running as Alkosh, my stamina magicka have a pretty wide gap. So using this when I'm wearing Alkosh allows me to close that gap so they're a little closer together and still keep a pretty high stamina pool available. Very useful for that element of it. If I'm not wearing Alkosh and I'm wearing something else, I'll typically slot either Shield Discipline, great skill. It means everything blocks for free. Basically, you don't have to hold block. You can swap bars, do anything you want, and you never lose block. Very useful skill for when you're doing solo stuff on your own. And this ability makes everything that you do reduced by 100%, so you can taunt for days and it wouldn't cost anything for those 7 seconds. But I really like to run Enchanted Forest a lot. This is the healing cheap ultimate. If I'm healing people with it, I get 20 ultimate back if they're at 50%, but it also gives me that extra 2% healing done, so it increases the healing I receive and everything else. Northern Storm is my standard, though, because of the 8% max magic. That's the front bar. A couple other things that swap out depending on the fight. Simmering Shield, if I'm fighting a boss that is very, very heavy on the frontal attack and is not a ranged attack, Bone Surge is my go-to skill for that. Bone Surge is a great skill. 30% of your max health. So if you're at 40k plus max health, you're going to get about 12k damage shield. And if enemies allies activate the synergy, they get 100% of their max health. So most DPS are at 18,000 health. That's a 18,000 health damage shield. And they get Major Vitality. So, huge healing received, huge bonus for them. This is your damage shield. The challenge is it costs stamina, and it costs almost 4,000 stamina. So, it's not something you want to use non-stop. You want to use this in prep for a big heavy attack, like a St. Olm's big heavy attack, or a big swipe from the second boss in VHOF, or before 1,000 cuts. Use it before the first one and on the third one. Proc this to give you that extra buffer, but you can't spam it because you're going to run out of stamina and then you're going to be up a creek. Sometimes, based on the fight, if things hit hard enough, I'll swap out Gripping Shards for Absorb Magic. Absorb Magic's a phenomenal skill. Mostly, not only do you get a bunch of damage mitigation, and you can heal yourself for 70% of your max health, which is stronger than my Polar Wind, fun fact, but it also gives you the 8% block mitigation and reduction in block cost. So scenarios where you're going to be blocking a lot, very useful on there. If that happens, I tend to put Gripping Shards in my back bar because this is also my way of applying minor maim to my enemies through chilled status effect. Let's talk about the back bar real quick. Bar, again, this is an ice staff typically, but it can also be a restoration staff. You've got a lot of flex spots in here, particularly on your top two options. Start with the ultimate first, Warhorn. Standard expectation for every tank is to run Warhorn, go into PvP, get it, morph it to aggressive. The resource generation is great for offensive and defensive, makes their shields better, makes their heals better, makes their health higher, very important, and the major force is very nasty for damage, very useful. Get it, use it. Ice Fortress, this is our major buffs. So major resolve, major ward, giving us that, but it also will give us minor protection. So that means we don't need to worry about a circle of protection or anything like that. We just always have minor protection up for 24 seconds. Very helpful. It also means that when this is gone, it's a double hit, however, if you forget to reapply it, because not only do you lose the 5,000 resistance bonuses, which is almost 10% damage mitigation, you lose another 8% from minor protection. So it's very useful to make sure you keep this up at all times. Leeching vines. This one is huge, very, very beneficial. Grow vines on you or the lowest health ally in front of you for 10 seconds. Now, the vines heal you for the target for 1,300 health. Each time they take damage, can apply and occur once every second. So, this is really great if you're the off tank. You apply this to the main tank. Every time he takes damage, he gets healed for it. That heal gives you back resources, and it will give it back to them. If you are main tanking, you kind of have to make sure you turn away from the group a little bit to apply this on yourself, and then you get those heals, and again, get that resource management, which is very nice. The big benefit of this, though, is the second paragraph. Applies minor lifesteal to the enemies that damage you, or damage the target for 10 seconds. So if they hit you the first second you cast it, 10 seconds, reapplies every time until this goes away, and then another 10 seconds after that. Healing you and your allies for 714 health every second while they're damaging them. So every second they're doing damage, you're getting 714 health back, which basically means you're getting an extra 1,400 health recovery for the entire group. You're basically given a free heal over time by running this ability. A lot of healers will run quick siphons they can give this, or you'll see some tanks run blood altar. If you're running in the group, they don't need that. They can have that slot open for other things because you're providing that buff. And you want to keep this up as much as you can because it's very beneficial. This can also proc spell power cure. This can proc earth gore. This can proc all those other sets that we were running that had a heal based element to them. So take advantage of having this on your bar and using it to really benefit you in the group. Deceptive Predator. Major expedition, major endurance, and minor evasion for 14 seconds. This is the big caw wings. They look really cool. So just from that standpoint, they're pretty nifty. I like them for the caw element of them. But within the actual skill themselves, they're useful because you get the movement speed bonus, which is really helpful when you're trying to reposition or move around, especially while holding block. Stamina recovery, you get that from your potion, so it's great, but it's alright. But when you're on your ice staff bar, you do have stamina recovery, so it's a nice little bonus from that side of it. And then minor dodge chance for that 5% for 14 seconds. 5% doesn't seem like a lot. It's not stellar. It's not like endgame blow your mind great. But it does come in handy, and I've had times where I've seen a heavy attack wind up, and I'm like, uh-oh, and then I dodge it. So it's helpful for that. Another item I would run, or another skill I would run this slot, is from the green balance ability, which is the Lotus Blossom. Lotus Blossom makes all of my light attacks and heavy attacks restore health to me and my allies, and gives me major prophecy, increasing my spell critical. So my more likelihood to crit on my magic heals, which this is considered a magic heal, and when I do a heavy attack, I'm giving almost 5k health back to me or a friend. So as I restore resources, I'm doing heavy attacks. Very useful skill. Deceptive Predator is also nice because it does give me all of those passives from the Animal Companion tree, like the recovery and some of those other ones. Frozen Gate. This is our chains. I like to argue that in certain scenarios this is actually better than chains because I can pull adds faster than somebody using chains. I cannot be as precise, however. This will pull a random add. It will put a portal down, and as you can see here, it's a pretty good sized portal. And anyone who steps in that is going to get automatically teleported to me. I can lay 3 of these down and have them all just kind of sitting here. So if I know an ad's going to spawn, say, on this door, I can just stack a portal on them and have them all sitting there. And then as soon as he shows up, he's going to appear and it's going to pull him in to us. It's very useful from that element of it. And it will immobilize them for 3 seconds. Now, part of those 3 seconds count as part of their transit time, so don't expect them to just sit still right after they show up to you. It also applies major maim. Damage done by 30%. That's huge. Very, very, very beneficial. Major maim for 30 seconds. Sorry, for 4 seconds. 30% for 4 seconds. And you have to 3-up at one time. This is great. The only fight where it becomes a little problematic at times is in VMAW on the twins, because you have a chance of pulling your allies' adds because it's random who pulls them. Thankfully, Silver Leech next patch will fix that. Otherwise, this is a wonderful ad management tool. Taunt the stuff as it comes in the big things. Use this to pull in the ranged adds and everything's in real quick. Just remember, it costs Magicka. And look, everything here costs Magicka. So it's pretty expensive. So make sure you've got Magic Recovery. Echoing Vigor. This skill is here partially for the heal. Again, it's about 1,000, 1,200 per second. So not bad, not, you know, not stellar as in the end all be all, but it's there. But it also gives a chance to have an extra heal out on the group. A lot of stamina DPS and trials are not going to be running Vigor because they're relying on their healers. This gives a little more extra buff for the healers and for the group. And if you're running in 4-man content, this is a chance to proc Spell Power Cure prior to you going into the scenario, going into it. This gets easily swapped out for Purge, another very, very useful skill. You need to have this for a lot of fights, so definitely have this handy. And a lot of times, or sometimes Frozen Gate, if there's no adds I really need to taunt, I'll replace that typically with Crushing Shock if I need to do any bashing of adds or utilize that for range interrupt. Elemental Blockade, again, more ice, more mobilization, or even just good old energy orbs, extra heals for the group. My heals aren't going to be great, it's not super stellar, but it is an extra heal. It's a little less pressure on your healers. Other skills worth having: Rapid Maneuvers is useful for a lot of scenarios and trials. Stalwart Guard, put this on a DPS, they get minor force permanently. Pretty useful to give them that, so that we don't have to worry about running that as often. Heroic Slash automatically applies minor maim and gives you minor heroism. Since I only run 1 bar of my skills per limit, I don't typically run this too often, but it is nice having. Shield Assault is needed for pretty much just one fight, which is Veteran Mazatoon, Ruins of Mazatoon, the last boss, hard mode. So you can stun the ad, because you don't really have any other stuns available. Budding Seeds and Enchanted Growth are 2 heal abilities, nice to have around. And Growing Swarm, I utilize really in a scenario where I need to apply damage to an ad, but I can't get up close to them. So really just SO hard mode on the ad pulls at the end there. But other than that, the rest of them are just leveling. Well, folks, that's it for my build video. I hope you found it helpful. Please feel free to add any comments in the comment section if you have any questions. If there's anything that I can answer for you, I'll be happy to. My YouTube channel has a bunch of other playlists that are kind of show you in videos of me tanking different levels of content, and feel free to check those out if you want some ideas. And just take a look, and hope you enjoyed, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your time playing the game. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great one. Bye-bye.